let's pick up where Gary Gensler left off, because you actually highlight within the report perhaps some of the regulatory uncertainties that hang over these crypto-native exchanges. I'm thinking particularly of the decentralized exchanges, Uniswap and the like. How is that affecting optimism or not in ultimately backing these companies and seeing them grow?
Yeah, I think, look, investors have looked at these centralized exchanges and seen what's happened over the last 18 months or so.
FTX.
Yep, a lot of the bad actors have been flushed out. Are there more bad actors out there? Possibly. But I think investors feel a lot more confident in how they can assess and diligence these bad actors. They really have the toolkits to do that now. So we know that regulations are going to come, and that is a big challenge for investors, especially here in the U.S. So the last time we spoke, probably 6-8 months ago, I said the regulation arbitrage isn't really there yet. You're starting to see that now. Mm-hmm. So the longer that we have this regulatory uncertainty here in the U.S., we're going to start seeing more innovation continue to move abroad. And you speak to investors, and you look at a lot of the big investments in Q4, they happen outside of the U.S. So investors, they're traveling the world now. They're not sitting in San Francisco comfortable having founders come to their offices anymore. Not in the crypto space. They're traveling around and they're going to conferences in Europe and in Asia to meet these founders, and that's what you're seeing. So, the regulation is going to be a pretty difficult aspect, and it's going to be a big concern here in the U.S. But then, if the legislation doesn't happen here, regulators doesn't get their act together here, then investors are going to find opportunities elsewhere.
And the opportunities they're finding abroad, and maybe even here in New York, as Chris Dixon would like to say from A16C's Crypto, what sort of things are being built? It feels as though a lot of it is back on Bitcoin since the spot Bitcoin ETF, but it's about making it more scalable ultimately. Yeah, so we did this in the research, is that the layer 2s for Bitcoin is a pretty interesting phenomenon, and we've seen a lot of development in it in the last year. So we're starting to see a lot of investments happen there as well. Bitcoin historically was just a digital store of value and maybe some for payments. Now you're starting to see these layer 2s that enables programmability and turning Bitcoin really into a computing platform very similar to Ethereum. And with that, you can have all these applications be built on it: DeFi, NFTs, gaming, stablecoins. So you're starting to see that come to space. So this year, with the spot Bitcoin ETFs, with the halving happening in April, and I think Bitcoin becoming this computing platform, that's a very strong bullish case for Bitcoin.
Robert, we're bang in the middle of 1Q, and in the context of the money flowing into companies in the crypto industry broadly, we focus so much on how tough it was last year. Are you seeing any green shoots in 1Q about the kind of trajectory for at least VC backing of crypto startups?
Yeah, definitely. I think the theme that you're going to see in this next cycle is what are the real world use cases for crypto? So we see a lot of tokenization. We talked about this in the past. That was a huge theme last year. We talked about physical infrastructure, so DePIN is another area we've seen a lot of investments, especially now with AI training, using compute power to do that. We saw Together AI, they raised this huge round, $100 million plus round last quarter. And also incentivize marketplaces. So marketplaces that uses tokens to, like a brain trust, to let users come on and have tokens to facilitate the way that they transact online. So you're going to start seeing a lot of that. We're very seeing a lot of investments in that, and that's what investors are focused on. These things have fundamental business models that are more durable, and they have a path to scalability.